Good morning. I now convene this morning's hearing entitled "Where Have All the Patients Gone?" Examining the Psychiatric Bed Shortage. Chief Biasotti, you can pull that microphone right up next to you, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Murphy and Ms. DeGette. I'm the immediate past president of the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police and Chief of Police in New Windsor, New York. I'm in my 38th year of service. My wife, Barbara, who is a psychologist, is here today with me. We have a daughter with schizophrenia who has been involuntarily hospitalized in excess of 20 times. Barbara and I met when she, like many moms, turned to the police for help when her, now our daughter, became psychotic, disruptive, and threatening. She was self-medicating, unemployed, and deteriorating despite my wife's heroic efforts to help her. Then she went into assisted outpatient treatment. It saved her life. In 2011, while at the United States Naval Postgraduate School's Center for Homeland Defense and Security, I published a survey of over 2,400 senior law enforcement officers titled "Management of the Severely Mentally Ill and Its Effects on Homeland Security." It found the mentally ill consume a disproportionate percentage of law enforcement resources. Many commit low-level crimes. 160,000 attempt suicide, 3 million become crime victims, and 164,000 are homeless each year. The survey essentially found that we have two mental health systems today serving two mutually exclusive populations. Community programs serve those who seek and accept treatment. Those who refuse or are too sick to seek voluntary treatment become law enforcement responsibilities. Officers in the survey were frustrated that mental health officials seemed unwilling to recognize or take responsibility for this second, more symptomatic group. Ignoring them puts patients at risk, the public, and police. It costs more than keeping care within the mental health system. As an example, there are fewer than 100,000 mentally ill in psychiatric hospitals, but over 300,000 in jails and prisons. The officers I surveyed pointed out the drain on resources it takes to investigate, arrest, fill out paperwork, and participate in the trials of all of them. Add to that the sheriffs, district attorneys, judges, prisons, jails, and corrections officers it takes to manage each of them, and you see the scope of the problem. Many more related incidents like suicides, fights, nuisance calls take police time but don't result in arrest or incarceration. Overly strict commitment standards and the shortage of hospital beds are major sources of frustration for officers. Hospitals are so overcrowded they often can't admit new patients and discharge many before they are completely stable. They become what we call round trippers or frequent flyers. One officer referred to it as a human catch and release program. Anyone who asks for help is generally not sick enough to be admitted, so involuntary admission, that is, being a danger to self or others, becomes the main pathway for treatment. Officers are called to diffuse situations and then have to drive, in some cases, hours to transport individuals to hospitals and then wait for hours in the emergency rooms, only to find the hospital refuses admission because there are no beds, or that the commitment standard is so restrictive. The only remaining solution for our officers is to arrest these people with serious mental illness for whatever minor violation exists, something that we're loath to do to sick people who need medical help, not incarceration. Finally, while everyone knows that everyday mental illness is not associated with violence, untreated serious mental illness clearly is. The officers in this survey deal with that reality every day. You in Congress dealt with it when Ronald Reagan and Gabrielle Giffords were shot, 2 guards in the Capitol building were killed, and the Navy Yard shooting happened. Representatives DeGette, Gardner, and Griffiths have experienced the worst of the worst in their states. We have to stop pretending that violence is not associated with untreated serious mental illness. We have to stop pretending that everyone is well enough to volunteer for treatment and then self-direct their own care. Some clearly are not. As I wrote in the intro of this survey, police and sheriffs are being overwhelmed dealing with the unintended consequences of a policy change that in effect removed the daily care of our nation's severely mentally ill population from the medical community and placed it with the criminal justice system. This policy change has caused a spike in the frequency of arrests of severely mentally ill persons, prisons, jail populations, as well as homeless populations, and has become a major consumer of law enforcement resources nationwide. If I could make one recommendation, it would be to prevent individuals from deteriorating to the point where law enforcement becomes involved. Return care and treatment of the most seriously ill back to the mental health system. Make the seriously mentally ill first in line for services rather than last. As a law enforcement officer and a father, I know that treatment before tragedy is a far better policy than treatment after tragedy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief.